Would you like to be able to impress your friends and family at the museum? You know, they're looking at the items in the case and they're trying to play matchy-matchy with the number 13 on a sculpture or a piece of pottery. And then they're looking down on the plaque, trying to read about it to understand. And you're just going to come in and say, that's a Minerva or that's a Heracles. Well, sit back for a couple of minutes and I'll explain the basics and you can be that Indiana Jones. So the gods and goddesses, they were really the superheroes of the day. And ancient pottery, for example, was the lunchbox of the day. Everybody wanted to have the best superheroes to impress their friends and to be able to remind themselves of the stories they learned as kids. So it's not hard. As I said, just sit back. I'll explain the basics. It's all about context and attributes. So keep those two things in mind. So for example, if I were to pop up this stud muffin, you would probably say Superman. It isn't a matter of what he looks like because it really doesn't matter what he looks like as long as he's a young guy. His attributes are the blue costume that he's wearing, the red S, and the cape. And his context is that he's flying, and he's flying over his newspaper building. So you probably also know him by the name Clark Kent. The young lady that he's carrying, well, her attributes are the press pass, and her context is, well, she's being held by Superman. That's a pretty good-looking couple. So now you're an expert. Learning the Greek and Roman equivalents of context and attributes, they're just details. So let's do an ancient equivalent. So the guy here is young. He has wings. Those are the attributes of the Greek Eros. And we know him as Cupid. And based on the context of being held by Cupid, we know that the scantily clad lady is Psyche. She's actually not wearing a whole heck of a lot of anything, is she? So let's do the big guy. He's the Greek Heracles, who's the Roman, and for most of us, Hercules. His attributes are that he's wearing the skin of the Nemean lion, which he killed in one of his stories, and he has a club. His context is that he's wrestling with some bad guys, and we know that because he's always wrestling with bad guys. I could pretend that I'm really good at saying that the guy he's throttling is King Busiris, just before the guy with the hammer kills the guy kneeling, but that's way too much detail. I had to Google that when I saw this particular piece of pottery. I'd honestly be looking for number 13 if I really wanted to get that deep into it. But if you see the lion skin and you see the club, it's always Heracles or Hercules, especially when he's throttling someone. Just to make it a little more interesting, each character, in addition to their attributes, can have a Greek, Roman, maybe an Etruscan, or an Egyptian name. So, for example, here we have the king of the gods, Zeus, and his attribute, biggest one, is the thunderbolt. He's the Roman Jupiter and the Egyptian Zeus Ammon. His wife is the Greek Hera, who is the Roman Juno. She's often portrayed with him, so that can be her context. If she's not with him, then you definitely know her by her attributes, which are the crown and the scepter, because she's a queen, and then the veil and often a libation bowl. Zeus's daughter, the Greek Athena, who can also be Roman Minerva, is always wearing a helmet. She often has a spear, a shield, and armor. The three of them make up the Roman Capitoline triad, which can be part of their context. Most of the characters also have a famous animal. So Zeus here has the eagle, Hera has the peacock, and Athena has the owl. So those can also be parts of the attributes. And then it just basically follows the same scheme for the rest of the pantheon. I've been making a series of shorts with many of the Greek and Roman gods. So you can take a spin over to my shorts and take a look at some of those. Well, that didn't come out right exactly, but anyway, or I'll provide a link in the card above. So how do you learn the attributes and context? Well, it's just like when we learned the characters and context for DC Comics like Superman. You learn the stories. If you like to read, there are textbooks, but please don't do that. They're pretty dry. These are adventure stories, right? So they're translations of the ancient texts. So Ovid's Metamorphosis, you have the Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer. I'd personally suggest a more plain English version of those. The straight translations can be pretty rough, maybe not as enjoyable. You can also watch modern versions of the stories. So Amazon Prime, for example, has 3 seasons of the Great Greek myths, which are pretty fun. But there are also a surprising number of cartoon adaptations. There are also some big Hollywood, big budget movies. You have to be a little careful with those. They tend to pervert the details just a little bit. Then finally, what's really fun is once you understand the ancient characters, you can really see some of the modern ripoffs. So as I sort of suggested, Superman and Lois Lane have some similarities to Cupid and Psyche. They're kind of surface, but there are some. But I just finished watching Reacher on Amazon Prime Video, and he's a total ripoff of Hercules. So he's a big guy known for his strength. He goes around the countryside righting wrongs and wrestling with bad guys. For his attributes, instead of a lion skin, he wears secondhand clothes, and instead of a club, he always has his toothbrush. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you found something useful to take with you. As usual, I had fun putting it together. If so, maybe you could go down and hit the like button, and if you really liked it, maybe even hit the subscribe button so you see when I release my next one. You can also go and click on one of these links to see some of my previous videos. If I got something right, if I got something wrong, if there are other topics you'd like to maybe hear a video on, please leave a comment down in the chat. So thanks a lot and see you soon.